I'm Vivian Reed, and last Tuesday night, I sat alone in my cramped studio apartment, staring at my laptop screen until the numbers burned into my retinas. The Mega Millions results glowed white against the dark. 7, 14, 21, 35, 49, and Powerball 12. My hands trembled as I pulled the crumpled ticket from my wallet for the 5th time. Match, 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 match. $22 million after taxes. I should have screamed. I should have jumped. I should have called someone, anyone. Instead, I sat in absolute silence, and then I started laughing. Not the good kind of laughter, the kind that comes from somewhere dark and bitter, the kind that tastes like iron and old wounds. Because exactly 8 days ago, my car died on Interstate 90, outside of Chicago, in the middle of January. The temperature was 6 degrees. My 2006 Toyota Camry just gave up, smoke pouring from under the hood like a funeral pyre. I called my brother, Damon. My successful 6-figure salary, lives in Lincoln Park brother, who drives a brand new Tesla Model S. Damon, I'm stranded, I said, my teeth chattering. I'm on 90, near the Addison exit. The car's dead. Can you... Vivian, I'm in the middle of a conference call with Singapore. His voice was clipped, annoyed. You're 32 years old. Call AAA. That's what it's for. Click. I sat in that freezing car for 3 hours before the tow truck arrived. 3 hours of watching my breath fog up the windows, watching cars pass by, feeling the cold seep into my bones, but mostly feeling the loneliness. That crushing, absolute loneliness that comes from knowing your own blood wouldn't cross the street to help you. Now, sitting here with $22 million in my bank account, well, soon to be, I wasn't thinking about mansions or cars or vacations. I was thinking about that night, about Damon's voice, about my mother's last words to me at Thanksgiving. You know, Vivian, if you just applied yourself like your brother, maybe you wouldn't still be struggling. I closed my laptop. The test had already begun forming in my mind. The next morning, I didn't go to the lottery office. Instead, I went to Morrison & Associates, the most exclusive estate planning firm in Chicago, the kind of place where billionaires hide their money and celebrities protect their assets. I'd researched them at 3 a.m., unable to sleep, my mind racing with possibilities. The receptionist looked at me like I'd walked into the wrong building. I was wearing my usual freelance designer uniform, jeans, a thrifted sweater, and my grandmother's old coat with the broken zipper. I probably looked like I was there to deliver food. I need to speak with someone about setting up a trust, I said. An anonymous trust for lottery winnings. Her expression changed instantly. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Harold Morrison himself, a silver-haired man in his 60s who looked like he'd been born in a 3-piece suit. Ms. Reed, he said, folding his hands on his mahogany desk. First piece of advice. Tell no one. Not your best friend, not your priest, especially not your family. That won't be a problem, I said. He studied me for a moment. Most people who say that don't mean it. They cave within 48 hours. I'm not most people. Something in my voice made him lean back. I can see that. Now, let's talk about protecting your assets. Over the next week, Morrison worked his magic. He created the Ember and Stone Trust. I chose the name myself. Ember for the burning anger I'd carried for years, and Stone for what my heart had become. The trust was completely anonymous, legally bulletproof. The ticket itself was moved from my sock drawer to a vault that required 3 separate keys to open. I was officially, invisibly, irrevocably rich. And nobody in my life had any idea. On Sunday, my phone buzzed. Mom. My stomach clenched automatically, a Pavlovian response to years of criticism disguised as concern. Vivian, it's Sunday dinner. You're late. Again. Not hello, not how are you? Just judgment, immediate and sharp. Sorry, Mom. I got caught up with a client project. Well, hurry up. Damon and Sienna are already here, and we're hungry. You were supposed to bring that quinoa salad. Click. I sat in my car outside her house in Evanston, the kind of affluent, tree-lined neighborhood where every house looks like it belongs in a lifestyle magazine. Perfect lawns, perfect cars, perfect misery hidden behind perfect facades. I didn't go inside, not yet. Instead, I drove home and began crafting the lie. The beautiful, necessary lie that would reveal every ugly truth. I would tell them my biggest client had gone bankrupt. I would tell them I couldn't pay rent. I would tell them I needed $6,000 to avoid eviction. Just $6,000 to test whether my family, my successful, comfortable, well-off family, had even a shred of humanity left. I already knew what they'd say. I'd known for years, but I needed to hear it. I needed the evidence, cold and clear, before I did what I was planning to do, because the revenge I had in mind wasn't just about money. It was about holding up a mirror and forcing them to see exactly who they'd become, who they'd always been. I picked up my phone and stared at Damon's contact photo. Him and his wife, Sienna, on some beach in the Maldives, both of them tanned and smiling, living their best Instagram life. My thumb hovered over the call button. This was it. The first test. The first step down a path I couldn't come back from. I pressed call. What would you do if you won the lottery? Would you tell your family, or would you test them first? Drop your thoughts in the comments and make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next will shock you. This is just the beginning of how $22 million destroyed my family, or maybe just revealed what was already broken. The phone rang 3 times. I could picture Damon in his Lincoln Park penthouse, probably checking the caller ID, probably sighing before he answered. Vivian. Not a question. Not a greeting. Just my name. Flat and resigned, like I was an obligation he'd been putting off. Hey, Damon, I need to talk to you about something. I heard the clink of ice in a glass. He was drinking his expensive whiskey, the $300 bottle he'd bragged about at Christmas. Make it quick. Sienna and I have reservations at Alinea at 8. Of course they did. 3 Michelin star restaurants on a random Sunday. That was Damon's life now. I took a shaky breath, slipping into the role. It's bad, Damon. Really bad. That tech startup I've been doing design work for, they went under, filed for bankruptcy last week. Silence. Not concerned silence. Annoyed silence. And, he finally said, and they owed me for 3 months of work, $15,000, Damon. Money I was counting on. I can't make rent next month. I'm going to be evicted. I let my voice crack. It wasn't entirely fake. There was real emotion there, just not about the money, about what I knew was coming. Jesus, Vivian. He sighed, long and theatrical. This is exactly what I've been telling you for years. Freelancing isn't a career. It's a hobby that occasionally pays. Damon, I'm not calling for a lecture. I'm calling because I'm desperate. I need $6,000, just to cover rent and deposits for a new place. I'll pay you back, I swear. As soon as I land a new client, stop, his voice went cold. Just stop. You know what? Number. The answer is no. The certainty in his voice, the ease of it, made my jaw clench. Damon, I'm your sister. I'm about to be homeless. You're 32 years old, Vivian. When are you going to take responsibility for your life? Do you know what Sienna and I have going on right now? Do you have any idea the pressure I'm under? I waited. Let him talk. Let him reveal himself. I'm managing a $50 million portfolio. I have clients who trust me with their entire retirement savings. And next month, Sienna and I are flying to Bali. First class, 10 days at a private villa that cost me $20,000. $20,000, Vivian. Do you think I can just throw money around because you can't keep a client? There it was. The villa. The price tag thrown in my face like proof of his superiority. I'm not asking you to cancel your vacation, Damon. I'm asking for $6,000, which might as well be $60,000 because it's the principal. If I bail you out now, what lesson are you learning? That big brother will always save you? That you never have to grow up? My free hand was balled into a fist so tight my nails drew blood from my palm. So that's it? That's your answer? Your sister's about to sleep in her car and you're worried about teaching me a lesson? Don't be dramatic. You're not going to sleep in your car. You'll figure something out. You always do. Look, I have to go. Sienna's waiting. Damon, get a real job, Vivian. Try Starbucks. I hear they have good benefits. Click. I stared at my phone. The screen went dark, reflecting my face back at me. For a moment, I just sat there, breathing hard, feeling that familiar cocktail of humiliation and rage. Then I smiled. Test number 1, complete and utter failure. I showed up at my mother's house an hour later, the expensive Whole Foods quinoa salad I'd promised sitting in the passenger seat. My mother, Patricia Reed, lived in a pristine Tudor-style home in Evanston that she and my late father had bought 30 years ago. Every shrub was trimmed. Every window gleamed. The house looked like it was perpetually ready for a photo shoot. Inside was the same. Cold perfection. All grays and whites and stainless steel. It looked like a hotel lobby, not a home. Damon was sprawled on the white leather sofa, scrolling through his phone. His wife, Sienna, sat beside him in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. On the coffee table, between them sat a brand new Valentino handbag, the price tag still dangling from the handle. $3,000. My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked me up and down, my old jeans, my clearance rack sweater, and her lips pressed into a thin line. You're late. Sorry, Mom. Traffic. There's never traffic from your neighborhood. It's 5 miles away. She turned back to the kitchen without waiting for a response. I followed, carrying the salad like an offering to an angry god. Is that the quinoa salad? Yes. She lifted the lid, peered inside, and frowned. It looks dry. Did you forget the lemon dressing? It's in a separate container. So it doesn't get soggy. She didn't sound convinced. We sat down at the enormous dining table, the one that seated 12 but only ever held 4. My father's chair at the head remained empty, a ghost at every meal since he'd passed 2 years ago. Damon was talking, as always, about his portfolio, about a new Tesla feature, about the villa in Bali with the infinity pool overlooking rice terraces. Sienna nodded along, occasionally interjecting with practiced enthusiasm. It's their presidential suite, Sienna said, her voice breathy with excitement. Private chef, butler service, the works. Damon deserves it. He's been working so hard. I pushed food around my plate, waiting for my moment. Actually, I said, my voice quiet, I need to talk to you all about something. The table went silent. They all turned to look at me, and I saw it in their faces. The annoyance at being interrupted. What is it, Vivian? My mother's voice had that edge to it. I looked down at my hands, let my shoulders slump. I lost my biggest client. They went bankrupt. And I can't make rent next month. The first test failed spectacularly, but 3 more family members remain. Will any of them help Vivian? Or will they all reveal their true colors? Hit that like button if you're already feeling the tension, and stay tuned for part 3, where Vivian's mother makes an offer that will make your blood boil. Sienna laughed. Actually laughed. A sharp, barking sound that cut through the dining room like a knife. Oh, Vivian, you're so dramatic. Bankrupt? Evicted? God, you had me worried for a second there. I just stared at her. My sister-in-law, this thin blonde woman who'd married into our family 3 years ago, and immediately decided she was the authority on how we should all live our lives. Damon put down his fork with exaggerated patience. Vivian, we literally just talked about this an hour ago. I know, but again? My mother's voice cracked like a whip. You're doing this again, Vivian? At Sunday dinner? Mom, I'm not doing anything. I'm telling you, I'm in trouble. Real trouble. Damon leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine. Let me guess. You need money? I need $6,000, I said, letting my voice shake. Just enough to cover next month's rent and a security deposit somewhere cheaper. I'll pay you back, I swear. 6,000, my mother repeated, her lips curling. $6,000 because you chose to pursue art instead of a stable career. Graphic design isn't art, Mom. It's a legitimate profession. Is it? Sienna interrupted, tilting her head with mock concern. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like unemployment with extra steps. Have you thought about, I don't know, getting a real job? Starbucks is always hiring. Great benefits, I hear. The insult was so perfectly delivered, so casually cruel. She'd said the exact same thing Damon had said an hour earlier. They'd probably rehearsed it. I looked at Damon. Did you tell her to say that? He shrugged. I might have mentioned it. Because it's true, Vivian. You need structure, accountability. Maybe serving coffee would teach you what the real world looks like. My hands were trembling under the table. The real world. As if I hadn't been working 60-hour weeks for years, hustling for every client, teaching myself skills they couldn't even comprehend. I'm not asking for charity, I said, looking at my mother. Mom, I'm asking for help. From my family, $6,000 to keep your daughter off the street. My mother set down her napkin with deliberate precision. Vivian, you know your father and I worked very hard for our retirement savings. That money isn't for emergencies like this. Being homeless isn't an emergency? It's not for your emergencies, she clarified, her voice ice cold. That money is reserved. It's for Damon. The room tilted. What? Your brother has responsibilities, she continued, as if explaining something to a child. He has a wife. He has an image to maintain. People in his position, in his industry, they have standards to uphold. Your father and I, we're his safety net. We will not let him fall. But you'll let me fall? My voice came out strangled. You've been falling your entire life, Vivian. This is just another Tuesday for you. The cruelty of it, the casual, matter-of-fact cruelty, stole my breath. Damon was nodding along, as if this was all perfectly reasonable. Mom's right. You're always in some crisis. If we bail you out now, you'll be back here in 6 months with a new disaster. I wouldn't, I whispered. I swear, Damon, this is different. It's never different with you. He cut me off. Look, Sienna and I are leaving for Bali in 2 weeks. I'm not canceling my wife's vacation because you made bad financial decisions. Again. I turned to my mother, one last desperate attempt. Mom, please, I'm begging you. I'm your daughter. She looked at me with something that might have been pity if it weren't wrapped in so much disgust. Then maybe you should have acted like my daughter. Maybe you should have made me proud instead of embarrassing me at every turn. The words hit like a physical blow. You remember your college graduation? She continued, warming to her subject. That little ceremony at that art school? All my friends were there, Vivian. My entire book club. Their children were graduating from Northwestern, from University of Chicago, with degrees in law, in medicine, real degrees. And I had to stand there and smile while you walked across that stage with a degree in graphic design. Mom, do you know what Patricia Blackwell said to me? She said, well, that's creative, like I'd failed as a mother. Like my daughter was some kind of project that didn't quite work out. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed. So no, she said, her voice final. No, I won't give you $6,000 to enable your delusions. But I'll tell you what I will do. She paused, and I saw something calculating flash across her face. You can move back here. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. What? You can move back home, if you're really in such dire straits? Hope flickered, stupid and pathetic. Really? Of course, you can't have your old room. I converted that into my meditation space, but the storage room in the basement is empty. Mostly empty. You can stay there. The hope died as quickly as it had sparked. The storage room. Yes, it has a window. Well, a small one. And you'd need to help out around the house naturally. I'm not running a charity, Vivian. You'd earn your keep. Earn my keep, I repeated numbly. Cooking, cleaning, laundry. My arthritis has been terrible lately. I could use the help. Think of it as an exchange. Room and board for household services. She was offering me a job as her maid, as her live-in unpaid servant. And one more thing, she added, her voice sharpening. You are not to bother your brother about any of this. Damon doesn't need your drama. He has enough stress in his life. If you move in here, you leave him alone. Understood? I looked around the table, at Damon, who was already back on his phone, at Sienna, who was examining her manicure, at my mother, who was watching me with cold expectation. The storage room. The same room they'd put me in when I was 19, when they told me they couldn't afford to help with college anymore. The same room where I'd cried myself to sleep for months. She knew exactly what that room meant. This wasn't an offer. It was a punishment. So, my mother pressed, what's it going to be? The storage room or the street? I stood up slowly. My legs felt like lead. I need to think about it, I whispered. Don't think too long, she called after me as I walked toward the door. Pride doesn't pay rent, Vivian. I drove home in silence, my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Test number 2, catastrophic failure. A basement storage room and unpaid servitude. That was her mother's help. But Vivian has one more person to test. And what happens next will show you just how deep family cruelty can go. Smash that subscribe button because part 4 is where things get truly vicious. I sat in my apartment for 2 days, staring at my phone. Damon had failed. My mother had failed spectacularly. But there was one more name on my list, one more test I needed to conduct before I could move forward with what I was planning. Sienna. My brother's wife, the woman who'd walked into our family 3 years ago with her designer handbags and her casual superiority, the woman who never missed an opportunity to remind everyone that she came from old money, her family's estate in Connecticut, her father's country club membership, her boarding school pedigree. I'd never liked her, but I'd never understood just how much she looked down on me until that dinner. The Starbucks comment. The way she'd laughed at my crisis like it was dinner theater. But I needed to hear it from her directly. I needed the complete set. I picked up my phone and dialed her number. She answered on the 4th ring. Vivian? Her voice was light, breezy, slightly annoyed. This is unexpected. Hey, Sienna, I'm sorry to bother you. I know you're probably busy packing for Bali. Oh God, yes. It's chaos. I have 3 different bikinis laid out, and I cannot decide which ones to bring. First world problems, right? She laughed, completely oblivious. Right. Listen, I need to talk to you about something. Okay? Her tone shifted, cautious now. If this is about Sunday dinner, Vivian, I really don't want to get in the middle of family drama. It's not about that. Well, not exactly. I thought maybe you could help me. Silence. Then, help you how? I know your family is well off, and I'm in real trouble, Sienna. I'm about to lose my apartment. I've asked Damon, I've asked my mom, and nobody can help. I just need $6,000. I'll pay you back with interest. I'll sign a contract. Whatever you need. Wait. She cut me off, her voice suddenly sharp. Are you asking me for money? You're asking me personally? I just thought, because my family has money? Her voice went cold. Is that what you're implying, Vivian? That because I'm white, because my family has money, I should just, hand you $6,000? I froze. That wasn't what I'd said. That wasn't even close to what I'd meant. Sienna, no. I just meant that you've talked about your family's estate, your dad's investments. Wow, she laughed, but it was ugly now. Wow. So, you were listening. You were sitting there at family dinners, listening to me talk about my family, and you were, taking notes? Planning how to use it against me? That's not what I'm doing. Do you know how offensive this is? Do you understand that you're literally stereotyping me right now? Assuming that white people are just walking ATMs? My mind reeled. She was the one who bragged about her wealth constantly. She was the one who threw money in everyone's faces. Sienna, I'm not stereotyping anyone. I'm desperate. You're desperate. So you thought you'd shake down your brother's wife? God, Vivian, this is low even for you. I'm not shaking you down. I'm asking for help. No, her voice was ice. No, you're asking me to enable your lifestyle choices. Your poverty isn't my responsibility. Maybe if you'd made better decisions, gotten a real degree, found a real job, you wouldn't be in this position. I closed my eyes, breathed through my nose. Stay calm. Get through this. Is there anything you can do? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. Anything at all? I'll work for it, Sienna. I'll do whatever. Work for it? She interrupted, and I could hear the smile in her voice now. The cruel, calculating smile. Actually, you know what? I might have an idea. My stomach dropped. What kind of idea? Well, Damon and I are going to be gone for 10 days. And our place, you know how beautiful it is. The plants need watering, especially my orchids. They're very delicate, and someone needs to bring in the mail, keep things tidy. You want me to house sit. House manage, she corrected. It's more than just sitting there, Vivian. It's real work. Watering, dusting, organizing. Making sure everything is perfect for when we return. And you'd pay me? Of course I'd pay you. I'm not a monster. I'd pay you, let's see, 10 days, full-time work, $100 a day. That's $1,000 total. $100 a day. To manage a 3,000 square foot penthouse in Lincoln Park. In the real world, a professional house manager would charge 5 times that at minimum. That's not even close to 6,000, I said. No, but it's a start. And honestly, Vivian, it's more than you deserve. It's certainly more than you'd make sitting around designing logos that nobody wants. The casual cruelty of it, the ease with which she delivered the insult, made my vision blur with rage. Think about it, she continued, her voice bright now, enjoying this. You'd be living in luxury for 10 days. Our sub-zero fridge is fully stocked. You could sleep in our guest room. Well, actually, no. The housekeeper uses that when she stays over. But the couch is very comfortable. Restoration hardware, $3,000. She was offering me a job as her servant, offering to pay me poverty wages to clean her toilets while she vacationed in Bali. And she thought she was being generous. I need to think about it, I managed. Don't think too long. I need an answer by tomorrow. I have other options, you know. My Pilates instructor's daughter is looking for work. She paused. Oh, and Vivian? If you take this job, I expect professionalism. That means no complaining to Damon, no drama. You work quietly, you leave everything perfect, and you thank me for the opportunity. Understood? I hung up without answering. Test number 3, complete and total failure. I had my evidence now. All 3 of them, Damon, my mother, Sienna, had shown me exactly who they were. Cold, cruel, fundamentally incapable of basic human decency. But there was one more person I needed to see before I set my plan in motion. 3 tests, 3 failures, 3 family members who proved they cared more about money and status than their own blood. But there's one person Vivian hasn't tested, and that person will change everything. Don't miss part 5, where hope enters the story in the most unexpected way. I didn't plan to go see Aunt Rosa. I told myself I wouldn't test her. It felt wrong, cruel even. She was different from the rest of them. She'd always been different. Rosa Mendez wasn't technically my aunt by blood. She'd been married to my Uncle James, my father's younger brother, until he died from a heart attack 7 years ago. She was 68 now, living on a modest pension from her 40 years as an elementary school teacher and whatever Social Security provided. My mother had always looked down on her. James married beneath himself, she'd said more than once, usually after a few glasses of wine. Rosa lived in a small apartment in Pilsen, a working-class neighborhood my mother refused to visit. Too ethnic, she'd once said, not even bothering to hide her disdain. But Rosa had been the one who came to my art school graduation. Rosa had been the one who sent me birthday cards with $20 bills tucked inside, money she probably couldn't afford to spare. Rosa had been the one who told me, year after year, "Your work is beautiful, mija. Don't let anyone tell you different." I found myself walking toward her building without consciously deciding to go there. My feet just carried me, like they knew I needed somewhere safe, somewhere I could breathe. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of a red brick building that had seen better days, but was clean and well-maintained. The hallway smelled like someone's cooking, cumin and garlic and something baking. Home smells, real smells. I knocked on her door, suddenly unsure why I'd come. The door opened, and there she was. My Rosa was small, barely 5'2", with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and warm brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She was wearing a cardigan covered in embroidered flowers, something she'd probably made herself. Those warm eyes went wide when she saw me, then immediately filled with concern. "Vivian? Mia, what's wrong?" I hadn't said a word. She just saw it on my face. All the pain, all the humiliation, all the exhaustion, and I broke. I hadn't cried in front of Damon. I hadn't cried in front of my mother. But here, on Aunt Rosa's doorstep, I shattered. The sobs came from somewhere deep and ugly. The kind of crying that's all snot and gasping and no dignity whatsoever. "Oh, baby. Oh, mi amor, come here." She pulled me inside, her small arms surprisingly strong, and held me while I fell apart. She didn't ask questions. She didn't tell me to stop. She just held me, one hand rubbing circles on my back, murmuring soft words in Spanish that I didn't understand but felt in my bones. When the worst of it passed, she led me to her tiny living room, a space filled with crocheted blankets, plants in mismatched pots, and framed photos of people she'd loved. She sat me down on her worn sofa and disappeared into the kitchen. She came back with tea, sweet, milky tea in a chipped mug that said, "World's Best Teacher." She pressed it into my hands. "Now," she said, settling into her armchair, "tell your tia what happened." And God help me, I did. I told her the lie. The same lie I'd told the others. Lost client, bankruptcy, eviction. $6,000 standing between me and homelessness. I told her about calling Damon, about the dinner with my mother. I even told her about Sienna's offer, though I left out the part where I'd already called her. Rosa listened without interrupting. Her face grew sadder with each detail, but she didn't gasp or exclaim or judge. She just listened with her whole heart. When I finished, I looked down at my tea. "I'm not asking you for anything, Aunt Rosa. I swear, I needed to talk to someone who wouldn't make me feel like garbage." She was quiet for a long moment. Then I heard her chair creak as she stood up. "Aunt Rosa, hush, mija." She walked out of the living room. I heard her bedroom door open. Her drawers sliding. My heart started pounding. "Aunt Rosa, no, please. I didn't come here for money." She came back carrying an old checkbook, the kind with the carbon copy still attached. The cover was worn, the edges soft from years of use. "Aunt Rosa, please." I stood up, my panic rising in my chest. "You can't. I know how tight money is for you." She held up one small hand. "Sit down, Vivian. I can't let you... Sit down." There was steel in her voice, the same steel that had managed 30 kids in a classroom for 4 decades. I sat. She opened the checkbook on her coffee table, picked up a pen, started writing. "Your mother," she said quietly, her pen moving across the check, "has always been a fool. A proud, cruel fool who cares more about what people think than about what's true." She tore the check out with a sharp rip. "And your brother learned everything he knows from her. How to be cold. How to measure people by their bank accounts." She looked up at me. "Your Uncle James, he saw it. Years ago, before he died, he told me to watch out for you. He said, 'Rosa, that girl has a good heart. Too good for that family. They're going to try to break her. Don't let them. She held out the check. I looked at it. Made out to Vivian Reed for $6,000. This is everything, I whispered. Aunt Rosa, this is all your savings. It's my money, she said simply, and I choose to give it to you. Because you're not an investment, mija. You're not a lesson to be taught or a problem to be fixed. You're a person who needs help, and that's what family does. I took the check with shaking hands, and this time when I cried, it was different. Not the desperate, broken crying from before. This was grief and love, and something I hadn't felt in years. Being seen, being valued, being chosen. I threw my arms around her, and she held me like I was still 5 years old and the world had scraped my knee. Thank you, I sobbed into her flower-embroidered cardigan. Thank you, Aunt Rosa. Thank you, she patted my back. You're going to be okay, mija, I promise you. You're going to be just fine. When I left her apartment an hour later, I had her check in my pocket and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The tests were complete. 3 failures, 1 pass. Now, it was time to show them all what $22 million could do. One person. Out of her entire family, only one person showed basic human decency. And that's all Vivian needed to see. The revenge is about to begin. And trust me, you won't believe what happens next. Part 6 is where everything explodes. I let 1 week pass. 7 days of absolute silence. I didn't answer Damon's texts. I didn't return my mother's calls. I let them wonder, let them assume I'd crawled into whatever hole people like me crawled into when we failed. During that week, I met with Harold Morrison 3 more times. We finalized everything. The Ember and Stone Trust was fully funded and completely anonymous. My new bank account had a balance that still didn't feel real. $22 million, give or take, sitting there like a coiled snake waiting to strike. The first thing I did was return to Aunt Rosa's apartment. She opened the door with that same warm smile, but there was concern in her eyes. Mija, I've been worried. I can't take this, Aunt Rosa. I held out her check, uncashed. I found another way. A new client came through, a big contract. I'm going to be okay. She looked confused. But you said, I know what I said. But things changed, fast. These tech companies, you know how they are. I smiled, and this time it was genuine. But I need you to do something for me. Next Thursday, at 10 a.m., a car is coming for you, a driver. Don't ask questions, just trust me. Wear something nice. She studied my face. Vivian, what's going on? You'll see. Just promise me you'll get in the car. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Okay, mija, I trust you. The letters went out on Monday. Morrison's firm handled everything. Thick, cream-colored envelopes sent by registered mail requiring signatures. They arrived simultaneously at my mother's house in Evanston and at Damon and Sienna's penthouse in Lincoln Park. I got one too, for authenticity. The letterhead was impressive. Morrison and Associates, Estate Planning, and Fiduciary Services. The language was deliberately vague but tantalizing. You are cordially requested to attend a mandatory reading of the last will and testament of the late Theodore Ashford Wellington III. Your presence is required as a potential beneficiary. Please arrive promptly at 11 a.m. on Thursday, November 16th. Theodore Ashford Wellington III. I'd invented him carefully. The name sounded old, established, vaguely East Coast aristocratic. The kind of name that suggested trust funds and country clubs and inheritances that changed lives. Most importantly, it sounded like someone from Sienna's world. My phone exploded within an hour of the letters arriving. Damon called first. Vivian, did you get this letter? Theodore Wellington? I've never heard Mom or Dad mention that name, but Wellington, that's got to be from Sienna's side. Old Connecticut money. Oh my God, Vivian, this could be huge. I could hear the greed crackling through the phone line like electricity. I don't know, Damon. The letter doesn't say how much. It doesn't have to. If Morrison and Associates is handling it, we're talking serious wealth. They don't handle estates under $10 million. Do you know what this means? I did. I knew exactly what it meant. My mother called 10 minutes later, breathless. Vivian, Theodore Wellington. That has to be Sienna's grandfather or great-uncle or something. Patricia, my friend Patricia from book club, her husband is an estate attorney. I called him. He says Morrison and Associates handles billionaires. Billionaires, Vivian. For the first time in my life, my mother sounded excited to talk to me. Not about me. About money I might help her access. The next 3 days were agony for them, I'm sure. For me, they were delicious. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray, typical November in Chicago. I dressed carefully, my usual poor Vivian uniform. Faded jeans, an old sweater with a pulled thread, my thrift store coat. I needed to look the part one last time. I arrived at Morrison and Associates at 10:45. The building was all glass and steel in the heart of the Loop, the kind of place where even the doorman looked wealthy. The lobby was cathedral quiet, all marble and dark wood and the scent of money. I sat in the waiting area, my heart hammering. At 10:55, the elevator dinged and they poured out like they'd been shot from a cannon. Damon wore his most expensive suit, the navy Tom Ford he'd bragged about for weeks after buying it. His hair was slicked back, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. He looked like he was going to a funeral, but his eyes were alive with barely contained excitement. Sienna was beside him in a simple black dress that probably cost $3,000. Tasteful, expensive, appropriate for receiving an inheritance. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She looked like she'd been born for this moment. My mother wore her best dress and pearls, the real ones, not the costume jewelry she wore to church. She clutched her handbag like it contained state secrets, her eyes darting around the lobby, taking in every detail, every signal of wealth. They saw me, and their expressions flickered, surprise, then annoyance, then a kind of forced tolerance. I was part of this now, whether they liked it or not. Vivian, my mother said, her voice tight, you're here. The letter said mandatory, I replied quietly. Damon was barely paying attention to me. He was staring at the art on the walls, at the receptionist's desk, calculating, always calculating. This place is incredible, he whispered to Sienna. This is real money. The receptionist, a woman in her 50s with perfect posture and a knowing smile, finally looked up. The Reed family and Mrs. Sienna Reed? That's us, Damon said quickly. And Ms. Vivian Reed? Here, I said softly. Mr. Morrison will see you now. Follow me, please. She stood and began walking toward a long hallway. Damon practically jogged to keep up. Sienna glided behind him, her face a mask of appropriate solemnity, but her eyes were bright. My mother followed, her hand pressed to her chest like she might faint from anticipation. I walked slowly, watching their backs, watching them rush toward their own destruction. The conference room was at the end of the hall, a massive space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River. The table could have seated 20 people. At the head of it stood Harold Morrison himself, silver-haired and imposing in a charcoal suit. Please, he said, his voice deep and authoritative. Come in, sit down. They filed in like children on Christmas morning, barely able to contain themselves. I took a seat at the far end of the table, away from them, separate. Morrison waited until everyone was seated. The silence stretched, heavy with expectation. Then he smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. Thank you all for coming, he said. Before we begin, I need to clarify something. There is no Theodore Ashford Wellington III. The heir left the room. The trap just snapped shut. 4 greedy people walked into that conference room expecting millions. And they're about to learn the truth. Part 7 is the confrontation you've been waiting for. Don't you dare miss it. What? Damon's voice cracked. What do you mean there's no... The letters, Morrison continued, his voice clinical and precise, were a formal mechanism to ensure attendance. This meeting is not about an inheritance. This meeting is about the Ember and Stone Trust, established 3 weeks ago by your family member, Ms. Vivian Reed. 4 heads snapped toward me in perfect unison. 4 pairs of eyes, wide with confusion, then suspicion, then something that looked like fear. "Vivian?" My mother's voice was shrill. "What is this? What kind of sick joke?" "It's not a joke, Mom." I stood up slowly, my hands steady. For the first time in my life, facing them, I felt no fear, no shame, nothing but cold, crystalline clarity. 3 weeks ago, I won the lottery. The Mega Millions jackpot, $22 million after taxes. The silence was absolute. Nobody breathed, nobody moved. Sienna's mouth fell open. Damon went pale, a sickly gray color spreading across his face. My mother just stared, her hand frozen on her chest. But you're poor," Damon whispered, like he was trying to solve an impossible equation. "I was never as poor as you thought. I'm a successful designer. I make good money. But yes, now I'm rich, very rich." I looked at each of them. "But that's not why we're here. We're here because of what happened 2 weeks ago." "What are you talking about?" My mother's voice trembled. "The test," I said simply. "I lied to each of you. I told you I was broke, about to be evicted, desperate for $6,000. Just $6,000 to keep me off the street." Damon's face went from pale to red. "You lied? You manipulated us?" "I gave you a choice," I corrected. "I gave each of you a chance to show basic human decency. And you all failed, spectacularly." Morrison cleared his throat. "Perhaps I can provide some context." He opened the first folder on the table and slid it across to Damon. "Mr. Reed, you told your sister that your money was tied up, that you couldn't possibly help her because you'd moved capital into investment funds." Damon stared at the folder like it was a bomb. "The truth," Morrison continued, "is somewhat different. Your company, Reed Capital Management, is currently under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission for fraudulent trading practices. You're personally carrying $130,000 in credit card debt across 7 cards. And according to our financial analysis, you'll be filing for bankruptcy within 60 days. You investigated me?" Damon's voice was barely a whisper. "You had no right." "I had every right," I said. "You told me money was tight while planning a $20,000 vacation. I wanted to know what tight meant to you." Morrison slid another folder toward Sienna. She flinched like he'd thrown a snake at her. "Mrs. Reed, you offered Ms. Reed employment as what you termed a temporary estate manager for $100 per day, a position that would have required round-the-clock availability for 10 days. Sienna's eyes darted to the folder, then to me. "That was a generous offer. The market rate for such a position is $500 to $700 per day, minimum. You offered poverty wages." He paused. "Additionally, the Wellington family of Connecticut, the family you've claimed connection to for years, filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy 8 months ago. Your father lost everything in a failed real estate venture. There is no family estate, no trust fund, no old money." Sienna's face went white. She looked at Damon, and I saw it. The moment she realized he didn't know, that she'd lied to him about her background just as much as anyone else. "You told me your family was wealthy," Damon said, his voice hollow. "Damon, I can explain. You married me for my money." He laughed, a broken sound. "You married me because you thought I was rich." "Both of you married lies," I said. "How poetic." Morrison placed the final folder in front of my mother. She was shaking now, her hands trembling so badly she couldn't open it. "Mrs. Reed, you told your daughter that you couldn't help her because your savings were reserved for your son, to maintain his standard of living." My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "A mother protects her successful child. You also," Morrison continued, "co-signed on all of Mr. Reed's business loans. And 3 years ago, you and your late husband took out a second mortgage on your home to provide seed capital for Reed Capital Management. That mortgage, along with your son's business debts, went into default last month." My mother gasped. "No, Michael never told me." Your late husband hid the extent of the financial damage from you. Yes. But the debts are real, Mrs. Reed. Your home was scheduled for foreclosure. Was, she whispered. Morrison looked at me. I nodded. The Ember and Stone Trust purchased all of these debts from the relevant financial institutions last week. The mortgage on your home, Mrs. Reed, all of Mr. Reed's outstanding business and personal loans. The trust now holds approximately $300,000 in total debt. The room was spinning for them. I could see it in their faces, the calculations, the panic, the dawning horror. What does that mean? Damon asked, though I could tell he already knew. It means, I said, standing up and walking toward them slowly, that I own you. I own your house, Mom. I own your business debt, Damon. With one phone call, I can foreclose on the house. I can demand immediate payment on the loans. I can destroy both of you financially. My mother started crying. Not the delicate tears she used for sympathy, ugly, desperate sobs. Vivian, please. You're my daughter. Now I'm your daughter? 2 weeks ago, you offered me a cot in your basement if I agreed to be your maid. You told me you'd give everything to Damon, your successful child, while I could beg on the street. I didn't mean, you meant every word. At that moment, the conference room door opened. Aunt Rosa stood there, looking confused and small in her good church dress and her embroidered shawl. My mother saw her and something in her broke further. What is she doing here? This is a family meeting. You're right, Mom. It is a family meeting. I walked to Aunt Rosa and took her hand. And she's the only family I have. Morrison pulled out one more envelope. This one had Aunt Rosa's name on it. Mrs. Mendez, the Ember and Stone Trust has voted to award you a grant for your lifelong service to education and community. The amount is $5 million. The truth is out, the debts are revealed, and $5 million just went to the one person who deserved it. But this isn't over yet. Part 8 brings the final, devastating conclusion that will leave you speechless. Aunt Rosa stared at the envelope in her hands like it might evaporate. $5 million? You wrote me a check for $6,000, I said, my voice soft but clear. Everything you had. You didn't judge me. You didn't lecture me. You didn't offer me scraps and call it generosity. You gave me everything. Mija, I don't understand. That check, I said, was worth more than all their money combined. Because it came with love, with dignity, with respect. I squeezed her hand. This is my way of saying thank you. Sienna made a sound, something between a sob and a scream. She lunged to her feet, her chair clattering backward. $5 million? You're giving her $5 million? Her voice cracked on the word her. And there it was. The ugly truth she'd hidden behind country club manners and boarding school diction. The racism she'd dressed up in politeness. You're giving $5 million to some... She caught herself, but barely. To her, while your own brother drowns in debt? While your mother loses her house? My own brother, I said, turning to face her fully, told me to get a job at Starbucks. My own mother offered me a storage room, an unpaid servitude. And you, I stepped closer. You offered me poverty wages to clean your toilets while you sipped cocktails in Bali. I was trying to help you. You were trying to humiliate me, and you did. Congratulations, I smiled. How does it feel to know you married a bankrupt fraud for his money? Sienna's face contorted. She whirled on Damon. You told me you were successful. You told me you were a millionaire. I am successful, Damon roared, standing up. His face was blotchy red, sweat beading on his forehead. This is temporary. The SEC investigation is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Morrison's voice cut through. Mr. Reed, you've been running a Ponzi scheme for 18 months. You've defrauded 11 clients of their retirement savings. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is federal prison. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Damon turned to me, and for the first time since we were children, I saw fear in his eyes. Real, genuine terror. Vivian, please. I'm your brother. We're family. Family, I repeated. You left me on the side of the highway in 6-degree weather because you had a conference call. You told me to grow up while planning a $20,000 vacation. You stole my college tuition money and never paid it back. That was years ago. It was last month. My voice rose for the first time. Last month, when I called you crying and desperate and you hung up on me. That was last month, Damon, not years ago. Last month. He flinched like I'd hit him. My mother had been silent, but now she stood on shaking legs. Her makeup was running, black streaks of mascara down her cheeks. She looked old suddenly. Small. Vivian, baby, please. Her voice cracked. I know I said terrible things. I know I hurt you. But you have to understand, I was protecting your brother. I was trying to help him succeed. By destroying me? I asked quietly. By telling me I was an embarrassment? By offering me a basement room like I was a servant? I never meant... She choked on a sob. You don't understand what it's like, Vivian. The pressure, the judgment. All my friends' children are doctors, lawyers, successful. And you were always so different, so stubborn. You wouldn't just do what we asked. What you asked was for me to disappear, I said. To be smaller, quieter, less. You asked me to be nothing so Damon could be everything. That's not true. It is true, Mom. And you know it, I took a breath. But here's the thing. I'm giving you a choice, the same choice you gave me. Her eyes widened with desperate hope. A choice? I'm not foreclosing on your house. Not yet. I looked at Morrison, who nodded. The Ember and Stone Trust is offering you a monthly stipend, $1,500, enough for groceries, utilities, basic expenses. $1,500? She looked confused. But the mortgage payments are $3,000, which is why you'll need to get a job, Mom. I hear Starbucks has great benefits. You might meet some interesting people, learn what the real world looks like. Her face went white. You can't be serious. I'm 64 years old. Aunt Rosa is 68, and she worked for 40 years. I think you'll manage. Damon was shaking his head, backing toward the door. This is insane. You're insane, Vivian. You can't do this. I already did. I looked at Morrison. The foreclosure paperwork? He handed me a folder. I held it up so Damon could see. I can call this in any time. Your business, your debts, your reputation, all of it is in my hands now. One phone call, and you're finished. So what? He spat, all his smooth, finance guy polish gone, leaving just the cruel, entitled child underneath. You're going to hold this over me forever? Keep me under your thumb? No, I said simply. I'm going to do exactly what you did to me. I'm going to leave you alone to figure it out, to grow up, to take responsibility for your life. I turned my back on them, on all of them, and took Aunt Rosa's arm. Wait, my mother cried. Vivian, wait. We can fix this. We can be a family again. I stopped at the door, but didn't turn around. We were never a family, Mom. We were just people who shared DNA and a dinner table. Real family doesn't let you freeze on the highway. Real family doesn't offer basement rooms and call it love. Real family shows up. I looked at Aunt Rosa, who was crying quietly, her hand clutching mine. And I finally found mine. We walked out together. Behind us, I heard Sienna screaming at Damon, heard my mother sobbing, heard Morrison calmly explaining the terms of their debt repayment plans. The heavy door closed behind us, muffling the chaos. The silence in the marble hallway was perfect. Mija, Aunt Rosa whispered, what did you just do? I burned it all down, I said. Every bridge, every lie, every pretense. And I'm free. 6 months later, I'm sitting on a balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The house behind me is beautiful, modern, airy, filled with light. It belongs to Aunt Rosa, bought with her $5 million and a little help from me. She's down on the beach right now, taking a surfing lesson from a patient instructor half her age. She's laughing, that pure, unself-conscious laugh of someone who's finally getting to live. My laptop is open in front of me. I'm designing a logo for a nonprofit that helps people escape financial abuse. I'm doing it for free because I want to, because I can. My phone buzzes. A text from my mother. The 14th this week. I delete it without reading. Damon's bankruptcy was finalized last month. Sienna filed for divorce 3 days later. She's already engaged to a real estate developer in Greenwich. I hope she learned something, but I doubt it. My mother got a job at a local coffee shop. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she tells people she's semi-retired and does it for fun. The cognitive dissonance must be exhausting. As for me, I'm rebuilding. Not my relationship with them. That's ashes, and ashes don't regenerate. I'm rebuilding myself. The version of me that doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. The version that knows my worth. $22 million didn't buy me a family. It just revealed I never really had one to begin with. But it did buy me something more valuable, the truth. And the freedom that comes from finally letting go. I look out at the ocean, at Aunt Rosa riding a wave on her board, her arms spread wide like she's flying. And I smile. Sometimes the family you choose is the only family you need. So what do you think? Would you have done the same? Have you ever had to cut off toxic family? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't cruelty. It's living well and leaving the past exactly where it belongs, in the ashes.